The cold December wind cut through my jacket as I stood on my grandmother's porch, holding my 6-year-old son Tommy's hand while my wife Sarah balanced our 1-year-old daughter Emma on her hip. The warm glow from inside promised everything Christmas should be: family, laughter, love. I could hear the music, smell the cinnamon and pine. Tommy was practically bouncing with excitement, clutching the handmade ornaments he'd crafted for his great-grandmother. "Daddy, do you think Grandma Helen will like the snowman I made?" he asked, his breath forming little clouds in the freezing air. "She'll love it, buddy," I assured him, though my stomach churned with an anxiety I couldn't quite name. I rang the doorbell, adjusting the gift bags in my free hand. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of people moving, the Christmas tree lights twinkling. The door opened, and there stood my mother, Patricia Wayne, in her pristine red dress, pearls gleaming at her throat. Her expression shifted the moment she saw us from practiced holiday cheer to something cold and dismissive. "Wayne," she said, my name dropping from her lips like an inconvenience. Her eyes swept over my family as if we were door-to-door salespeople she needed to dismiss. "What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Mom, we're here for Grandma's Christmas party. She invited us weeks ago." She stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door nearly closed behind her, cutting off the warmth and light. "Well, there's been a change of plans. The house is full. Charles and Madison are here with their children, and we simply don't have room for extras." Extras, that's what we were to her. My throat tightened as I watched Tommy's face fall, confusion replacing his excitement. Sarah's arm tightened around Emma, who had started to fuss in the cold. "Mom, we drove 3 hours to be here, Grandma specifically." I said there's no room. Her voice was sharp now, final. "Perhaps you should have called ahead to confirm. Charles's family arrived early, and they're staying the night. We can't accommodate everyone." I stood there, stunned, as the reality sank in. My younger brother, Charles, the golden child who could do no wrong, who had received a down payment for his house from our parents, who got the family business connections, who never had to fight for a scrap of approval, he was inside, warm and welcomed, while my family stood in the cold like beggars. "Patricia, please," Sarah spoke up, her voice steady despite the situation. "It's Christmas. The children have been looking forward to this for weeks. Tommy made special ornaments for everyone." My mother's eyes flicked to my wife with barely concealed disdain. She'd never approved of Sarah, a teacher from a middle-class family, not the society daughter-in-law she'd envisioned. "I'm sure they're not lovely, but as I said, we simply don't have the space, you understand." Tommy tugged on my coat. "Daddy, why can't we go in? I'm cold." Before I could answer, the door opened wider, and there was Charles, designer sweater perfect, holding a glass of wine. "Oh, Wayne, Mom said you might stop by. Sorry about the mix-up, but you know how it is, first come, first served." He laughed as if he'd made a clever joke, not even attempting to hide his smugness. "Charles, this isn't about first come. Grandma invited us all." He shrugged, taking a sip of his wine. "Well, Mom's managing the guest list this year. She knows best about these things." Behind him, I could see his wife, Madison, dripping in jewelry our parents had gifted her, their 3 children running around in matching Christmas outfits that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Go home, Wayne," my mother said, her voice cutting through the cold air. "There's no room left. This is a family gathering, and we need to prioritize accordingly." Prioritize. As if I hadn't been her son for 38 years, as if my children weren't her grandchildren. Tommy's hand went slack in mine, and when I looked down, I saw tears streaming down his face. "But I made presents," he whispered. "I made one special for great-grandma Helen." My mother barely glanced at him. "I'm sure you can mail it to her after the holidays." That's when something inside me finally snapped. Years of being second best, years of watching Charles receive every advantage while I fought for scraps of attention, years of pretending it didn't hurt at all, crystallized in that moment, watching my mother dismiss my crying child on Christmas Eve. "You know what, Mom? We get it. We've always gotten it. Charles is your real son, and I'm just—" "What? The practice run? The disappointment?" "Don't be dramatic, Wayne. This has nothing to do with that." "It has everything to do with it." My voice rose, and Emma started crying. Sarah bounced her gently, but her eyes were fixed on my mother with a fury I'd rarely seen. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering, it's always been about Charles. His achievements, his children, his success that you bankrolled while telling me I needed to learn the value of hard work. Charles stepped forward, his expression shifting to mock concern. "Wayne, come on, you're making a scene. Think about your kids." "I am thinking about my kids," I shot back. "I'm thinking about how they're standing in the cold, being told they're not welcome at their great-grandmother's Christmas party because their uncle's family is more important." That's not my mother started, but I wasn't done. "When Charles needed money for his house, you gave him $200,000. When I asked for a loan to start my business, a loan I would have paid back with interest, you told me I needed to learn financial responsibility. When Madison had their first child, you threw them a baby shower that could have been a wedding. When Sarah was pregnant with Tommy, you didn't even visit us in the hospital." Wayne, those situations were completely different. How? How were they different? Because Charles went to the right schools? Because he married someone with the right pedigree? Because he plays golf at the country club while I work 60-hour weeks to provide for my family? The door opened again, and this time, my father appeared, Robert Wayne, stern-faced and disapproving as always. "What's all this commotion? Wayne, why are you causing problems?" Of course, I was causing problems. Not my mother for turning us away, not Charles for gloating about it, me for having the audacity to be upset about it. "We're leaving, Dad. Don't worry. Wouldn't want to cause any more problems for the family." But as I turned to go, holding Tommy's hand and reaching for Sarah, a voice rang out from inside the house, sharp, clear, and filled with an authority that made everyone freeze. What in God's name is going on out here? Grandma Helen appeared in the doorway, 83 years old, but standing straight as a rod, her silver hair pinned up elegantly, her dark eyes blazing with a fury I'd never seen before. She pushed past my parents and Charles, not caring that she was in her house slippers, and walked right out onto the porch. "Helen, please go back inside. It's cold, and we're handling," my mother started. "Handling what, Patricia? Handling turning my grandson and his family away from my Christmas party, the party I specifically invited them to? The party I've been telling Tommy about for weeks on our video calls?" She looked down at Tommy, whose face was red from crying, and her expression softened. "Oh, my sweet boy, come here." She opened her arms and Tommy ran to her, sobbing into her dress. "Grandma Helen, they said there's no room for us." He choked out between sobs. "No room?" Grandma's voice could have frozen hell itself. "In my 5-bedroom house? Patricia, would you care to explain to me how there's no room in my house for my great-grandson?" My mother shifted uncomfortably, her composure cracking for the first time. "Helen, we simply thought it would be better to keep the gathering smaller this year, more intimate." Intimate. Grandma Helen repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "And who decided that my Christmas party in my home needed to be more intimate?" "We were just trying to help manage things," my father interjected. "You know, at your age, hosting can be—" "At my age?" Grandma's voice rose. "Robert Wayne, I've been hosting Christmas parties since before you could tie your own shoes. I don't need anyone managing anything for me, least of all deciding which of my grandchildren is worthy of attending." She gently released Tommy and walked back to the doorway, but instead of going inside, she turned to face everyone. "Charles Madison, bring your children out here, right now." Charles looked confused, but obeyed, and soon his 3 kids were on the porch, looking bewildered. Grandma Helen looked at all 5 children, Charles's 3 and my 2. "These are my great-grandchildren," she said, her voice carrying across the front yard where several neighbors had started to notice the commotion. "All of them, equal, precious, loved." She paused, her gaze settling on my parents, or at least they should be. "Helen, you're being," my mother started. "I'm being what, Patricia? Honest? Let me be more honest then." She pulled Tommy closer to her side. "This little boy calls me every Sunday. He tells me about his week, about school, about his little sister learning to walk. He made me ornaments with his own hands. Charles's children? I see them when you parade them in front of me like trophies, dressed up and told to perform." Madison gasped, offended. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Grandma turned her sharp gaze on her. "Quick, Madison, what's your eldest favorite subject in school? What does your middle child want to be when he grows up? What's your youngest afraid of?" Madison opened and closed her mouth, but no words came. Grandma nodded slowly. "I thought so, but I can tell you that Tommy loves science, especially learning about dinosaurs. Emma just learned to say kitty and chases every cat she sees. Wayne calls me every week too, not for money, not for connections, just to talk to his grandmother." She straightened up, all 5 feet and 2 inches of her radiating authority. "Everyone inside. Now, we're going to have a family meeting." "Helen, this is unnecessary," my father protested. "What's unnecessary, Robert, is the way you've treated your eldest son for the past 38 years. Inside, now. Or I'll have this conversation out here where the entire neighborhood can hear about what kind of parents you really are." The living room fell silent as we all filed in. The other relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins watched with wide eyes as Grandma Helen stood in the center of the room, my family on one side, Charles's on the other, and my parents looking increasingly uncomfortable in the middle. "Everyone in this room needs to hear this," Grandma announced, "because I'm tired of watching this charade." She turned to the extended family. "How many of you knew that Patricia and Robert gave Charles $200,000 for his house?" Several relatives nodded, some looking uncomfortable. Charles had never been shy about mentioning his parents' generosity. "And how many of you knew that when Wayne asked for a $20,000 loan to start his business alone, mind you, not a gift, he was turned down?" The silence was deafening. A few relatives exchanged shocked glances. "How many of you knew that Charles's children received trust funds, college funds, and monthly gifts, while Wayne's children have never received so much as a birthday card with more than $20 in it?" My cousin Janet gasped. "That can't be true." "It's completely true," Grandma continued. "I've watched it happen for years. Watched Patricia and Robert pour everything into Charles while treating Wayne like an afterthought. And I kept quiet, thinking they'd eventually see their mistake. But turning a 6-year-old child away on Christmas, that's where I draw the line." "Mom, you're embarrassing us," my mother hissed. "Good, you should be embarrassed. You should be mortified. What kind of mother turns her grandchild away on Christmas? The kind who has to make difficult decisions about limited space." "Stop lying," Grandma's voice cracked like a whip. "This house has 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a finished basement. I've hosted 40 people here comfortably. This isn't about space, Patricia. This is about your sick need to punish Wayne for not being Charles. That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then explain to me why Charles's wedding had 500 guests and a reception at the country club, while you told Wayne to keep his guest list under 50 and held his reception in your backyard. Charles's wedding was different. Explain to me why Charles's children go to private school on your dime while you told Wayne that public school builds character. Those situations aren't comparable. Explain to me." Grandma's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but somehow it was more terrifying than her shouting, "Why you stood on my porch and told my great-grandson that there was no room for him at my table." Tommy had buried his face in my leg, and Sarah was holding Emma tight, tears streaming down her face. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "You want to know the truth?" my mother suddenly burst out, her carefully maintained composure finally shattering completely. "Fine! Yes, we've given Charles more, because Charles appreciates it. Charles followed the path we laid out for him. Charles married well, chose the right career, maintains the right social connections. Wayne always had to be different, always had to rebel." Marrying a public school teacher, starting some risky business instead of joining the firm, moving to that middle-class neighborhood instead of the district we recommended. So you punished him for being his own person? Grandma asked quietly. We invested in the child who showed the most promise. You invested in the child who was most obedient, Grandma corrected. And you know what? Charles may have followed your path, but Wayne built his own. Without your help, without your money, without your connections. That business you called risky, it's thriving. That middle-class neighborhood, it's full of real friends who actually care about each other. That public school teacher you look down on, she's raising two beautiful, kind children who know the value of love over money. She walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. You want to talk about investments, Patricia? Let's talk about investments. She walked over to a cabinet and finding it process very said it. She opened the folder, revealing legal documents. 3 months ago, I updated my will. Originally, I planned to leave everything divided equally among my children and grandchildren. But I've watched how you've treated Wayne, and I've made some changes. My parents went pale. The house, the vacation properties, the investment portfolio, it's all going to Wayne and his children, every penny. You can't do that, Charles shouted, jumping to his feet. That's not fair. I'm your grandson too. Yes, you are, Grandma said calmly, and you've already received your inheritance, haven't you? $200,000 for a house, private school for your children, monthly gifts, business connections, a guaranteed position at your grandfather's firm. By my calculation, you've received close to $1 million in advantages Wayne never got. That's different. How? Charles's mouth opened and closed, but like his wife earlier, no words came. I've also been documenting everything, Grandma continued, pulling out more papers. Every gift you've received, every payment, every advantage. And Wayne, I have his records too. $40,000 in student loans he paid off himself. A business loan from a bank at 12% interest because his parents wouldn't help. Medical bills for Emma's birth complications that he's still paying off while you, Charles, had your parents cover Madison's designer maternity ward stay. The room was dead silent. Several relatives were staring at my parents in shock. But that's not even the worst part, Grandma said, her voice heavy with disappointment. The worst part is what you've done to these children. She gestured to all 5 great-grandchildren. You've taught Charles's kids that they're entitled to everything without earning it, and you've taught Wayne's kids that they're worth less than their cousins. That's enough, my father roared, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. Helen, you've made your point. We'll include Wayne more. We'll be more fair moving forward. No, I said, and everyone turned to look at me. I'd been quiet since we came inside, processing everything, but now I knew what I needed to say. No, Dad, it's too late for that. Wayne, don't be stupid, Charles said quickly. You're about to inherit everything. At least hear them out. I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. Behind the designer clothes and perfect hair, I saw something I'd never noticed before, fear. He was terrified of losing his advantage, of having to compete on equal footing. You think this is about the money? I asked him. You think I care about Grandma's inheritance? Everyone cares about money, Charles said. No, Charles. You care about money. Mom and Dad care about money. I care about my son standing on a porch on Christmas, being told he's not welcome because his uncle's family is more important. I turned to my parents. Do you know what Tommy asked me last week? He asked why Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert don't love him like they love his cousins. He's 6 years old, and he's already figured out that you treat him differently. I had to lie to my son and tell him he was imagining things. My voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. Sarah and I have worked ourselves to the bone to give our kids a good life. Not a rich life, not a privileged life, but a good life. And we've done it without your help, without your approval, and honestly, without your love. Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? You don't love me the way you love Charles. That's not true, my mother started. It is true, and everyone in this room knows it. I was shouting now, years of pain pouring out. When Charles graduated college, you threw him a party. When I graduated with honors, by the way, you were too busy with Charles's high school football game to attend. When Charles got engaged, you flew to Paris to help him propose. When I got engaged, you told me I was too young and tried to talk me out of it. Wayne. When Tommy was born premature and spent 3 weeks in the NICU, you visited once. Once, when Charles's first was born, perfectly healthy, you practically lived at the hospital. When Sarah had a miscarriage before Emma, you told her maybe it was for the best because we couldn't afford another child anyway. When Madison had a miscarriage, you sent her to a spa in Arizona to recover. Sarah was crying openly now, and several relatives were wiping their eyes. Aunt Janet looked horrified. So no, Dad, it's not going to be more fair moving forward. Because moving forward, you're not going to be in our lives at all. The room erupted. My mother started crying, not the gentle tears of genuine emotion, but the theatrical sobs she used when she wanted to be the center of attention. My father was shouting about ungrateful children and family loyalty. Charles was pacing, muttering about fairness and inheritance. Madison was frantically typing on her phone, probably consulting with a lawyer. Through it all, Grandma Helen stood silent, watching. When the chaos finally died down, she spoke. Wayne's made his decision, and I support it, but I have more to say. She walked over to the Christmas tree, where the presents were piled high. Charles, Madison, come here. They approached warily. I want you to look at these presents. Count how many have your children's names on them from Patricia and Robert. They counted. 15, Madison said. Now count how many have Wayne's children's names. They looked. And looked. 2. Charles said quietly. 2. And do you want to know what they are? Grandma walked over and picked them up. Gift cards, $25 each. Your children have remote-controlled cars, designer clothes, electronics. Wayne's children have gift cards. She set them down and turned to my parents. This is who you are. This is what you've become. So consumed with appearances and status that you've forgotten what family means. We've given Wayne's children gifts, my mother protested. When? Name one birthday you've remembered without being reminded. One Christmas where you put thought into their presents instead of grabbing something last minute. Silence. I want everyone here to understand something, Grandma announced to the room. What you've witnessed tonight isn't a family fight, it's a revelation. Patricia and Robert Wayne have systematically favored one son over another for 38 years. They've damaged relationships, hurt children, and destroyed what should have been a loving family. She turned to the extended family. How many of you have wondered why Wayne rarely comes to family events? Why you barely know his children? Now you know. He wasn't staying away, he was being pushed away. That's a gross exaggeration, my father started. Is it? Janet, remember last Easter when you asked where Wayne was and Patricia told you he was too busy with work? Wayne, where were you actually? I swallowed hard, sitting in my car in the driveway. Mom had called and told me not to come because Charles was bringing his business partners and it would be too crowded. Janet gasped. Patricia, you said, or how about Thanksgiving 2 years ago? Grandma continued. Patricia told everyone Wayne's family had other plans. Wayne, what actually happened? Dad called the night before and said Charles wanted a smaller gathering, just immediate family. Then I saw the photos on Facebook. 30 people were there. The judgment in the room was palpable now. My parents stood isolated, even Charles stepping away from them. We're leaving, my father announced suddenly, grabbing my mother's arm. Helen, when you come to your senses and realize what you've done to this family. What I've done? Grandma laughed, but there was no humor in it. Robert, I've watched you destroy this family for years. I'm just finally shining a light on it. You're disinheriting your own son and grandchild. No, I'm giving Wayne what you never did justice. Charles has already received his inheritance through you. Now Wayne will receive his through me. We'll contest the will. Try it. I have 3 lawyers, 2 doctors, and a psychiatrist who've all verified my mental competency. I have documentation of every penny you've given Charles, every slight against Wayne. I have recordings of phone calls where you explicitly state your favoritism. You'll lose, and it will become public record. My parents stood there, deflated. Then my mother turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Wayne, please, we're your parents. We made mistakes, but what, Mom? You're sorry? You're not sorry for what you did? You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. You're really going to cut us off over this? I looked at Tommy, still clinging to Grandma Helen, at Sarah, holding Emma, at the family I'd built despite their lack of support. I'm not cutting you off over this, Mom. I'm cutting you off over 38 years of this. Tonight was just the last straw. And when we're gone, my father asked coldly, when we're dead and you regret this, what then? Then I'll know I protected my children from growing up feeling worthless. I'll know I stood up for my family. I'll know I finally stopped accepting crumbs and demanding to be treated like a son. I picked up Tommy, who wrapped his arms around my neck. We're going, buddy. But Daddy, great. Grandma's party is just getting started, Grandma Helen said firmly. Wayne, Sarah, you're staying. This is my home, my party, and you're my guests. She turned to my parents. You two, however, are leaving now. You can't throw us out. I can and I am. Charles, Madison, you can stay if you can behave. But if I hear one word against Wayne or his family, you're gone too. My parents looked around the room for support, but found none. Even Charles wouldn't meet their eyes. Finally, they gathered their coats and walked to the door. My mother turned back one last time. This isn't over. Yes, Patricia, Grandma said quietly. It is. The door closed behind them, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then Tommy looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. Daddy, why did Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert leave? I struggled for words, but Grandma Helen knelt down beside us. Because sometimes, sweetheart, people need a timeout when they haven't been very nice. Now, I believe you made me something special? Tommy's face lit up. The ornament! I'll get it! He wiggled out of my arms and ran to get the gift bag we'd left by the door. The rest of the evening was surreal. With my parents gone, it was like a weight had lifted from the room. Relatives who'd been silent for years finally approached me, apologizing for not speaking up sooner. Aunt Janet hugged me with tears in her eyes, whispering that she'd suspected but never knew it was so bad. Charles and Madison stayed, but kept to themselves. I caught Charles staring at me several times, something unreadable in his expression. Finally, near the end of the night, he approached me. Wayne, I didn't know it was that bad. I looked at him skeptically. Really? You didn't notice that you got a house while I got nothing? That your kids go to private school while mine go to public? That every family event revolved around you? He shifted uncomfortably. I thought you didn't want their help. You were always so independent, so stubborn about doing things your way. I was stubborn because I had to be. When you know you're not going to get help, you learn to help yourself. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Wayne. I really am. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever received from him. I didn't forgive him. That would take time, if it ever happened, but I nodded. Thanks, Charles. As we prepared to leave, Grandma Helen pulled me aside. Wayne, I need you to know something. The inheritance, it's not about punishing them or rewarding you. It's about justice. But more than that, it's about making sure your children never doubt their worth the way you were made to doubt yours. Grandma, I don't need. Yes, you do. You need it not for yourself, but for Tommy and Emma, for their college funds, for their futures, for the opportunities your parents denied you. Take it, use it wisely, and raise those beautiful children to know they're loved. I hugged her tightly, this tiny woman who'd stood up to the titans of my childhood. Thank you, Grandma, for everything. Thank you, Wayne, for being the man you are despite them, not because of them. As we drove home that night, Tommy fell asleep, clutching the new toy Grandma Helen had given him. She'd had presents ready for my kids all along, hidden away when my parents weren't supposed to let us in. Sarah reached over and took my hand. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Free. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Do you think they'll try to come back? Probably, but it doesn't matter anymore. They can't hurt us now. Sarah squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. It couldn't have been easy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But seeing Tommy's face when Mom turned us away, I couldn't let him grow up like I did, always wondering what was wrong with him, why he wasn't good enough. There's nothing wrong with him. Or with you. I know that now. It just took 38 years to really believe it. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, then Sarah spoke again. Your grandmother is amazing. She really is. I just wish she'd spoken up sooner. Maybe she was waiting for the right moment. Or maybe she thought your parents would change. Either way, she stood up when it mattered most. That was 3 years ago. My parents tried to reconcile several times, always when they needed something, never with genuine remorse. They tried to contest the will when Grandma passed peacefully in her sleep last year, but as she'd predicted, they lost. Charles and I have a cautious relationship now. He's had to learn to stand on his own feet without our parents' constant support, and I think it's actually been good for him. His kids are learning the value of earning things rather than expecting them. The inheritance from Grandma has allowed us to pay off our debts, set up college funds for the kids, and finally take that family vacation we'd always dreamed of. But more than the money, she gave us something priceless: validation that we were worth fighting for. Tommy is 9 now, thriving in school, still obsessed with dinosaurs. He doesn't ask about his other grandparents anymore. Emma is 4, a tiny force of nature who inherited her great-grandmother's spirit. They're growing up surrounded by love, knowing their worth isn't determined by their bank account or social status. Sometimes I think about my parents, wonder if they ever truly understood what they lost. 2 grandchildren who could have loved them, a son who spent 38 years trying to earn their approval, a daughter-in-law who would have welcomed them despite everything. They chose status over family, money over love, appearances over authenticity. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I'm too busy living the life I built, loving the family I chose, and making sure my children never doubt for a second that they are enough, just as they are. The ornament Tommy made for Grandma Helen that Christmas sits on our tree every year, right at the top. It's a crooked little snowman with button eyes and a lopsided smile, and it's perfect. Just like the family, we've become imperfect, maybe a little broken, but held together by something stronger than blood or money. Love, real, unconditional, unwavering love. That's the inheritance that really matters.